We have two more areas to take a look at when we're talking about therapies, and the third one. So we had psychodynamic, psychoanalytic. We had the humanistic therapies. This is actually the fourth one. The next after that we looked at was essentially the behavior therapies, and now we're looking at cognitive therapies. And one of them that is quite useful and also heavily used are two different ones, actually. I gotta quit combining my letters here. One is rational emotive therapy, and that's RET. This is what this one is, and we'll get to this in a minute. Another one would be straight what we call cognitive therapy. And a combination of cognitive therapies, a combination of that with behavior is something we refer to as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, that are quite effective in treating mood disorders, particularly. Sometimes it's also useful in some of the anxiety disorders as well. So CBT is another one. Essentially, cognitive therapists assume that our thinking colors our feelings, and so they try to teach people who suffer with these psychological disorders new and more constructive ways of thinking. One of the key players in this is a guy by the name of Albert Ellis. And the way he conceptualized our thinking is what I refer to as ABCs. And I may have done this when we were talking a little bit about stress, but let me take you back through it one more time. And essentially, when we talk about the central role of beliefs in our operation and our behavior, etc., is that there is always an activating event in the sequence of events that go on that prompt us to behave in a particular way. And the activating event leads to certain consequences. I'll just put consequence here. And these can be anger, they can be depression, they can be acting out, they can be other behaviors. They can be any number of things. And for most of us, I think generally we tend to think that A's cause C's. And what we miss is this B. Because from Ellis's point of view, what actually happens when an event occurs is that the event occurs and then we apply some belief about ourselves, about the world, about the future, to that situation, and then we arrive, and the consequences we see are the outcome of the belief. So actually, we've got the activating event that hits the belief that then hits the consequence. So just to give you a really simple example that is kind of ridiculous, but it could happen certainly. Let's just say I'm standing outside in the hallway by the president's office, waiting for a drink of water, and I'm minding my own business. I'm involved in thinking ahead of whatever is coming up, and while I'm standing there, suddenly I get aggressively, at least what it feels like to me, shoved from behind. And whenever that happens, we tend to make certain assumptions. Well, those assumptions come out of these beliefs that I'm talking about here. And so I'm thinking, what the heck? I mean, I'm minding my own business. Why would anybody bump into me? Because in this situation, because I'm minding my own business, I don't expect anybody to do that. And if they do, then they probably meant to do that. So I turn around, ready to give somebody a piece of my mind that I can ill afford to lose. And I turn around and look into the face of someone who's blind. Now, what instantaneously happens? Well, instantaneously, in most cases, instantly, my belief system will change. And I might even apologize for being in their way, which would suggest that indeed my beliefs had changed. So beliefs play a pivotal role, and even Scripture supports that notion, where it talks about in Romans, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Well, the mind is the very place where these beliefs are held, and they are part of the landscape of what we deal with. Now, let me break these beliefs down for you a little bit. One set of beliefs that we have are what we might refer to as irrational. And this is language that comes straight out of Ellis. And there are two different kinds of irrational beliefs we have. The first, it comes in the form of what if. And the way that Ellis talked about these is he called it catastrophizing, because generally the answer to this what if question is that it would be catastrophic, it would be terrible, it would be the end of all worlds, if you will. And that's part of this what if question that oftentimes occurs when we're confronted with an event that might scare us, for example. So what if is one. The other one is what you might put into the category of being overly demanding. Another word that Ellis used was absolutistic. And usually it is contained in one word, which is a extremely powerful word, and that is should. Now, let me clarify something real quickly. When I say should, I'm not talking about a moral imperative, which is what should contains in it. It is a personal imperative that does not usually take into account the nature of what I'm doing or the situation I'm in or whether I've had enough sleep or anything. So it tends to be very demanding. It tends to be very perfectionistic. And typically the person who engages in this is overrun with a lot of anxiety because of their demandingness with themselves. And that would fall into what the category of what Ellis referred to as irrational. So, and those are two, and the one phrase that I like to say a lot, and students remind me and typically remember it, is that when we tend to feel bad, a lot of times we're doing a lot of shoulding, I'll pronounce that very carefully, shoulding on ourselves. And Ellis coined that term because we do that, we expect things from ourselves without taking into account the circumstances that we're in and the resources that we have to bring to bear on that situation. So that's the irrational. The other belief system, and I'm going to try to leave what I'm going to do. Let's see here. I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it over here. The other belief system is what he referred to as rationalizations. And in a sense, these rationalizations are con jobs on ourselves. It is saying, sometimes we'll say it's no big deal. What you might call it is denial. And we minimize things. And this is our approach to difficult events or difficult circumstances. So we minimize it, we rationalize it, we deny it. We say it's no big deal when in fact it is. It's playing on us big time, but we're not willing to admit it. And this is one of these places where it has a huge impact on us, although like I said, we're not willing to admit it. And we have usually a physical outcome in this, which we do in the other one as well. Sometimes GI tract disturbances, ulcers are oftentimes associated with this kind of lifestyle approach. Over here, you have heart problems, blood pressure elevations, BP. You might have other cardiovascular issues that come into play. And those are all part of the two poles, if you will, of these beliefs that are thoroughly unhelpful and certainly unhealthy. Now, what one is the path toward healthy behavior. What Ellis referred to it as is rational. Another way to think about it is realistic. And essentially, it's contained in language internally is it would be nice if would be a good example. It's contained in personal preferences. I prefer something to be a certain way, but it doesn't have to be. My life is not going to fall apart if it doesn't. Like I said, the phrase, it would be nice if, are more realistic. And interestingly enough, James, the half-brother to Jesus, made this same comment in his letter. He said, how can we say that we're going to be one place or another? It's only if the Lord wills it. So I have to predicate my existence on forces out of my power, and therefore then I have to assess it that same way. And these are three different belief systems: irrational, rational, and rationalizations that were all very much a part of Ellis's approach to RET and cognitive therapy. Now, another key player is a guy by the name of Aaron Beck, and he developed cognitive therapy. His name is usually associated with cognitive therapy up here, and he had one aspect that is important to remember in his therapy, and that was the cognitive triad. And essentially, he said that most of the difficulty people experience is based on the beliefs about self, about the world, and about the future. And if you look into mood disorders and you look into the difficulties that people experience, it's usually contained by the beliefs, again, that they hold about these three specific areas. And Beck's approach is very effective. It has demonstrated that in some cases, it is better than medication itself. And so Aaron Beck and cognitive therapy is another key one to keep in mind. I already mentioned to you CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and essentially this mode combines the reversal of self-defeating thinking with efforts to modify behavior. That's where we get cognitive behavioral therapy. They aim to make people aware of their irrational negative thinking and to replace it, and then to practice a more positive approach to everyday life. And so that's the CBT approach that has combined the best of behavior therapy with a cognitive therapy. And again, the key is my frame, how I see the world, has a direct impact on how I interact with it.